the greatest flashback in One Piece history probably just began. God Valley. I could never have seen this coming, that Oda was going to weave in the story of God Valley with Kuma's backstory, which is an absolute stroke of genius, because on the one hand, you have the current modern-day narrative setup of the Straw Hats at Egghead Island, fighting against the evils of the world government in the form of Saturn, but obviously everything the world government is also throwing them at them at the same time, with so many heavy themes throughout this arc about the idea of freedom, breaking free from control, the desire by greater powers to try and control and suppress people's own personal desires. You have all of that as the backdrop of this moment, segueing into Kuma's flashback, which is this emotional, tragic storyline that showcases the full evils of the world government and really hammers in those themes of the drive to fight for freedom, to find freedom, to fight back against control. And that is woven into the epic storyline of God Valley at the same time, giving us the full context and lore reveals that we've been waiting on. It's combining basically three things is what I'm saying. The emotion and tragedy of Kuma's backstory with the lore reveals of God Valley that will give us so much more context to the full nature of the world government and celestial dragons that we are fighting and really what this full setup is about. And finally, just the epic hype that comes with getting to see Roger, Rox, Garp, the Rox Pirates featuring Whitebeard, Kaido, Big Mom, Garling, Shanks' father, relative, grandfather, whoever he might be. All of these figures fighting at the same time. So much coming together. This flashback is set to be, I think, in every category you could ask for from a flashback. In terms of emotion on Kuma's side, in terms of lore reveals, just with everything that we're set to find out about, and just in terms of hype with, you know, like, how crazy were we going during Odin's flashback just getting to see Roger and Whitebeard clash for a panel? This is going to be so much more than that. Everything that you could ask for out of a flashback, I think that this is set to be the best flashback in One Piece in every category that you could rate a flashback on. So this is just an unprecedented time in One Piece, and I think it is still just mind-blowing to me that Oda set this God Valley flashback up at a point in the story that none of us expected, but the moment that we're segueing into it, you kind of realize, wait, this is the perfect time to get it. This is the perfect time to really pull back the curtain on the past of the last 40 years or so, what the modern One Piece world has been dealing with in terms of the Celestial Dragons, right? Well, what is the modern day setup of why the revolutionaries formed, what Shanks' origins are, what his motivations today probably are, what is the legacy that Roger really fought for, and what he kind of left behind, why was he going up against Rox, what was the modern day influences for all of these pirates from today, Whitebeard, Kaido, Big Mom, coming from that Rox pirate crew. Just everything will sort of make sense after this God Valley incident. I am just seriously mind blown by the genius that he had to set up so many of these threads and bring them all together at this moment in time where they just make so much sense to bolster the story, the modern day story, by adding in terms of the thematic weight that's going to come, the dramatic weight, the emotion, and just the understanding of the real conflict that we are dealing with and why it's so important for the Straw Hats to succeed here at Egghead Island and then go on to defeat the Gorosei and Imu in the context of the broader world. So just the timing of it and how he's combining these two elements, telling that epic story of God Valley, but through the eyes of Kuma, a very emotionally powerful connection for the reader, right? Not necessarily through the eyes of Roger or Garp or one of these strong characters, but rather one of the victims of the whole incident, one of the victims of the whole system, right? The system of the Celestial Dragons, right? The system that really came under attack during this God Valley incident, where a revolutionary figure, Rox, came in to fight against it, and then somebody else, Roger, for reasons that we don't yet fully understand, had to come in and stop him from doing what he tried to do, and at the same time protect those who were suffering, the slaves, at the same time as the Celestial Dragons. So getting to see all that through the eyes of a slave, Kuma, that's going to be probably the most powerful way to tell this story while still giving us all the information that we wanted to see. At the same time, I wouldn't be surprised if maybe Oda ends up telling parts of God Valley separately outside of Kuma's scope, but I really do hope that, I feel like it could be most dramatic if we could just get it all out right now through the eyes of Kuma rather than telling it multiple times, but, you know, maybe that's just wishful thinking. At the same time, Kuma's section of the backstory. So Oda likes doing this thing very often, where he will start a tragic backstory and he begins it right off the bat with setting the character up in a very dark place, right? So he does a quick montage of showcasing the character in a very sad place, and that's not even the real tragedy. The real tragedy is what's going to happen by the end of the flashback, right? But he starts off with setting them up in a very dark place. So For example, Chopper, the first several pages of his flashback were about Chopper being abandoned by his tribe, being this abominable snowman. It's a Bigfoot type figure that the townspeople also chased off, being called a monster, being chased away, having no friends, right? That's just the first few pages of Chopper's flashback. Very sad, right? Nico Robin, same thing. Her flashback kicks off with the townspeople basically ostracizing her, kids calling her a demon, her foster parents being very, very mean to her, stuff like that, basically being an outcast, right? Nami, same thing, focusing on her being poor. Law, same thing. It focuses on, you know, the white town and everybody that he lost, his family, his sister. They go through the, like, Oda does this thing where the real flashback, the real tragedy is not at the beginning, usually, right? That's just the sad setup. The kid's in a terrible spot right off the bat, and then we're really gonna take him through the ringer and make things go, for, like, we're gonna tell a full story for them. They meet some people, they make some relationships, build a dynamic, etc. And it's all gonna go from bad to worse, though, by the end. They'll get some spots of light throughout it, but by the end, there's no happy ending there by the end of this flashback, right? Kuma's backstory. So understanding the idea that Oda really likes setting up the backstories with this sort of teaser, this appetizer at the beginning, right? Quickly go through some sad stuff that they're already experiencing before then telling the full story of the flashback. If we're just to compare Kuma's appetizer part, right? What we just got is essentially his appetizer. This is the equivalent for him of the section of Lost flashback that's about him losing his sister and his family and his town and everything like that. This is the equivalent of Chopper as being introduced to him, having been kicked out of his tribe and being ostracized by humans, right? This Kuma flashback is the equivalent of that part, the little prologue section of their flashback. And this was probably the darkest, I'm trying not to curse, this is probably the darkest, saddest first several pages of a flashback in One Piece that we've ever gotten. I cannot tell, it is beyond, I mean, just reading this, the simple segue from them being a simple happy family to then them being in chains and the family still trying to keep up an upbeat persona, upbeat face for Kuma, their kid, trying to pretend nothing's wrong, to then the mom dying, Kuma's reaction to that, and then in the same span of his father trying to console him over the mom dying, and the father, Clap, who is, if for a couple pages of a flashback and only getting a couple pages of a flashback, he is one of the saddest flashback characters that we've ever had. The few strip of panels that we had of him explaining the concept of Nika in this darkest moment where they've lost everything, they're slaves, helpless, mom just died, no hope out. In this darkest moment, he's explaining the concept of this symbol, right? This symbol, this fantasy, this dream that could maybe one day come and save them, that he believes will one day come and save them. This dream of a concept of Nika, and he's giving this upbeat, happy, dancing, outward appearance, right? Trying to make his son understand that, you know, there is hope, there is something to believe in. He's putting on this brave face, he's putting on this facade. And in the midst of that, he gets shot dead in front of Kuma's eyes. I couldn't even process what exactly happened in those panels right then, because I was like, there's no way did he just die right there? And he did. He very clearly did. All of that is just a little snippet intro of Kuma's flashback. And I think that this is extremely interesting that we're getting this now, because thinking back throughout it, slavery has always been a thing in One Piece, right? We always knew slavery is a thing in One Piece. Not always, right? But somewhere around mid One Piece through, you know, as we move further through the New World, we understood slavery is a thing more and more. However, Oda has deliberately hesitated from really delving into a slave's experience. This is the first time he's doing that. The times that we've gotten a slave's experience in bits and pieces was kind of like a quick flashback for Hancock where we get an idea, but we don't really see much of what she went through. Quick flashback for Fisher Tiger, basically explaining that, yeah, it's explained that he's a slave, but we never delve into it. Then at Sabaody, right, this is the closest we get to actually getting to see much of a slave's experience, and it's a quick snippet of that pirate that is being ridden by the Celestial Dragons. He tries to escape. Sorry, it's a couple things. We see one person as a horse for the Celestial Dragons. We see another pirate who's trying to escape from the Celestial Dragons. We get a glimpse of what happens, how slaves are punished, right, for trying to escape, trying to get away. We see a slave being used as a vehicle. So we see little snippets, right? We get the idea. Even when we cut to Marijoa during the reverie, we saw a snippet of the slaves who are moving the treadmill underneath the ground so that Shirahoshi and the mermaids can travel along it, right? All along, we've gotten snippets, we've gotten little flashbacks, we're being told that slaves exist, we've seen bits and pieces. This flashback was the first time that Oda actually walked us through a slave, like, I guess the world from the viewpoint of a slave, right? The slave's experience. Kuma's experience being taken in as a child slave. Because we walked through them being captured, Kuma's initial experience is not understanding what's going on, then his mother being killed, them being tortured, the father being tortured, then his father basically we see the experience of Kuma realizing the plight, the situation that they're in once his mother is dead and everything, and then we see him trying to believe in hope as his father dances for him, and then his father is shot as well. We're getting to live out a much more vivid depiction of day after day what a slave is essentially going through, and how they're essentially being mentally broken and having everything taken from them, including all sense of hope. This is the first time that Oda's really delved into that. Up till now, we've seen it in bits and pieces, glimpses, sort of snippets, a little window into what a slave might experience in the One Piece world. This is the first time we're following the story of a slave. This is the darkest individual character storyline that we will probably ever get for One Piece. Robin, that was the first time that we really got to understand genocide in One Piece. This is the first time that we're really getting to delve into slavery in One Piece. And it's not over, right? The God Valley incident has just begun, and we're understanding that the Celestial Dragons are here happy to hunt slaves, literally, as, part of their entertainment. So I think that this is set to be just one of the most brutal. I don't know how much. It's a shonen, so I don't know how dark it's really going to go, but it's already gone there, essentially. So it depends on how brutal they want to make things going forward, but whatever we've seen here so far, it's just a teaser. It's just a teaser, because this is how Oda always starts his tragic flashbacks. First, give him a little snippet of some really, really sad stuff, but it doesn't even hold a candle to what comes down the line. So prepare for real heavy emotional trauma by the end of this. Other aspects of the flashback that obviously were interesting were we got to see young Garling. And young Garling really does look like Shanks, except he is basically the worst human being, worst celestial dragon imaginable, has zero value for any life, just basically decapitated the head of this country for no reason. Well, decapitated, killed this guy for no reason. Doesn't care how far that puts him in the hole in terms of points, because he's planning on killing so many humans and so many slaves over the course of this competition that he's confident that he'll just rocket his way back up to the top of the rankings. Absolutely insanely messed up if you think about it. It's the way it is. It's crazy that Shanks is visually, like somebody that looks like Shanks is visually representing the worst of the Celestial Dragons. But I like the fact that this character is going to be heavily involved in the God Valley flashback, and we're already focusing on him. Because I want the God Valley flashback to feature as many of these previous gen characters as possible, and really give us more and more insight into everybody that we're going to be seeing today, because we are going to be seeing Garling again today. We're going to be seeing the Holy Knights. We're going to be seeing so many significant figures that we're going to be getting in the God Valley flashback. We're going to see them today, or their influence showing up today. And this flashback is going to be so important for us understanding so much of what we're going to get in the One Piece world, but so much of what we've already seen is going to be recontextualized. We might have a different opinion of Kaido by the end of this flashback. We might have a different opinion of Big Mom by the end of this flashback. So very excited on those ends. Last things to say, well, I want to talk about Saturn briefly, but we did get Ivankov, and we did get this girl Ginny. I'm leaning towards Ginny being Bonnie's mom. I've seen some people say it's Luffy's mom. I just feel like Bonnie makes more sense just visually with her, and also just because she's eating some food. You gotta remember that Bonnie's, her moniker is Big Eater Bonnie, right? She's even more known for eating a lot than Luffy is, which is crazy, but it's true. So interesting stuff to see there. I assume we're going to see the birth of the Revolutionary Army in some capacity here, whether or not Dragon shows up. Something important is happening here with these similar freedom-minded slaves coming together. And then let me talk briefly about the modern day, right? So we got Saturn stuff. With Saturn, people want to speculate on his ability and stuff, which mythical zone he is, etc. I'm down to just wait. I don't know that much about Japanese mythology, so I'm ready to find out, right? 3 things are clear, right? His sources of power, as far as we can tell. 1, Haki is very strong. He has crazy strong Haki, right? Initially, it seemed like he's just got a really strong Devil Fruit, but he has crazy strong Haki because the lightning is coming out all over the place, right? And you don't really see that outside of Yonko-type characters, really. Just lightning leaking out all over the place. And even with Yonko, usually they need to be exuding it in some... Like Big Mom, when she goes through her big, angry, yelling tantrums, that's when Haki's coming out like crazy. Saturn's just there. He's just existing, chilling. And there's black lightning going all over the place that can be seen from a distance and felt from a distance. That is rare in One Piece. So, Haki is very strong. 2, regeneration. Is he as durable as Kaido? No, but he might not even need to be, because he's got the next best, even better thing, maybe, which is just it seems like he can regenerate from anything. Is it possible that he also is a recipient of the immortality surgery? I think that is very much a possibility, so we'll get to see a bit of it in action, possibly here. And then finally, his Devil Fruit seems to be really strong, right? Seems to be really, really strong. It has some crazy effects, some sort of telekinesis type effects as far as I can tell so far, and it's been super effective up till now. So Saturn, all three categories you could ask for, right? Like Haki, durability, Devil Fruit, hacks abilities. He seems to be across the board really, really broken. I think it's going to come down to Luffy to have to defeat him, and I think a lot of that is being set up with the idea that, you know, Bonnie right now, she's helpless. She's felt this sense of helplessness for the longest time with what she experienced with Kuma, with what she's experienced all her life, and this message has been passed down through generations in Kuma's family, between Kuma's father Clap to Kuma to Bonnie, this idea that keep believing there will be a warrior of hope, Nika, that can one day come down and save you. So right now, Nika is there. The warrior that Kuma had been talking about, he is there, right? He's there, he's lying down, he's unconscious, he's out for the count, but he is there. I think that this has to end with Luffy getting back up in some capacity and saving Bonnie. Big shout out to a stream viewer, Rodolfo, who offered this brilliant, in my opinion, possibility for how Luffy recovers. We know that Kuma is heading over at this moment in time to most likely to Egghead Island. What does Kuma want? He wants to be a hero who can save people. Ultimately, Kuma is at the end of his life. He can no longer really be that hero who defeats the world government or all the Gorosei or anything, but he can be the one who allows the hero who is meant to save everybody, Nika, get back up. Kuma has the ability, as he did in Thriller Bark, to remove the pain and exhaustion from Luffy's body. Only this time for a much different purpose. Last time it was to test the crew, this time it would be to bring the Warrior of Liberation back to life. Kuma, with his own hands, he can bring to life that Nika figure that he counted on for so long. And he can show his daughter Bonnie that, see, this figure does exist and he can bring change to the world. So Kuma's last act in that sense could be a Pedro-esque moment of basically, I can't live that much longer to change things myself, but I can use what I have left to bring to life, to bring back, to help the person who can change things, right? So with Kuma's last moment, he can do that. He can bring Luffy back to life, essentially. And then Kuma's last vision of what he would get to see is his own daughter being freed by the figure, by the dream hero, by the savior that Kuma always told her would one day come to save her, right? So in a sense, Kuma is being saved both by her father, but also by the very legend that her father once told her to believe in, which I think is a very, very powerful story. So shouts to stream viewer Rodolfo for bringing that up, and I hope you guys find that interesting enough to talk about in the comments, because I would love to see more discussion around that idea. I think that that's really, really powerful. And lastly, we have the Voice of the People, which is the most liked post from my top tier of patrons. So Tiamawulo brings up that Luffy's life is now in danger because he was using Gear 5th for so long instead of just using his Haki from the start, as the first attack that it seems like Luffy used, Advanced Conqueror's Haki against Kizaru, did seem to take Kizaru out for the count, at least temporarily, so Luffy should have just used that earlier. Now, Tiamaulu suggests that this is something that could be addressed by either by Luffy internally or by someone else over the course of Egghead as a sort of learning moment. I personally have no idea if this is supposed to be an intentional moment where Luffy's supposed to learn a lesson or something like that. The reality is that Luffy's crew is currently in severe danger because Luffy, for no reason whatsoever, chose not to use Advanced Conqueror's Haki on his attacks till literally the moment that his Gear 5th transformation was about to run out. This is something that I personally complained about in the past like 3 chapter reviews, and people just told me to wait and see, and we waited and seen, and look at what happened. The character acts in an extraordinarily stupid manner that basically self-sabotages him and his entire crew, and now him and his entire crew is basically at the mercy of a celestial dragon that is out to kill all of them, right? Again, there's no reason for him to be using Gear 5th for an extended period of time without using Advanced Conqueror's Haki, because Gear 5th drains his stamina, and Advanced Conqueror's Haki, as far as we've seen during his battle with Kaido, has far more limited drain on his stamina. So there's no reason to do Gear 5th first, and then if that's not working, then eventually use Advanced Conqueror's Haki at the very end of it, when you're pretty much out of juice in general. instead of just using Advanced Conqueror's Haki first, and if that's not working, then stack Gear 5th onto it. Again, this is a Luffy-only problem. This doesn't happen in any other shonen series because every other shonen series, and even in One Piece in the past with the way Luffy used gears, there was always a logical reason why a character's most useful ability would also be the most taxing. In One Piece, it's not the case, because now with Gear 5th, Luffy's most useful ability, Advanced Conqueror's Haki, is not as taxing as Gear 5th, but Luffy just uses Gear 5th anyway for an extended period of time, and basically screws himself over by running out of stamina in dire situations, especially when he doesn't also just stack Advanced Conqueror's Haki earlier on in the fight. It makes absolutely no sense. Luffy could have literally just ended Kizaru the moment he had grabbed him, because we've literally seen that a single Advanced Conqueror's Haki attack would have taken out Kizaru. So the Luffy extended the fight for absolutely no reason. I really don't know if this is supposed to be a learning moment for Luffy, or if this is just Oda needing to create a situation with manufactured stakes where the Strats are at the mercy of Saturn. Therefore, he wrote Luffy to fight stupidly against Kizaru in a manner that makes absolutely no sense, and is essentially Luffy just actively shooting himself in the foot for no reason, right? Just to get us to a point where, oh no, Luffy is helpless against Saturn. That is how I feel about that. If this is a moment for Luffy to learn a lesson, and maybe Luffy has a talk with somebody later on, or somebody has a talk with Luffy that, hey, you can't mess around in fights in serious situations anymore because we will die because of it, that's great. But I feel like Oda just wanted to write a fun Gear 5th fight, and he also just wanted to have a situation where Luffy is a contrived situation, where Luffy is now randomly at the mercy of Saturn, which could literally only happen if Luffy decided to use an ability that would drain all of his strength for little to no effect until he actually used his better ability at the very end of it, instead of using it at the beginning. So I think that my complaints from the last several chapters were very much justified, because just look at the situation we're at here. It could have been ended so much more easily, and with Luffy having so much more stamina, if he just used the ability that's much easier and stronger for him to use towards the very beginning of the fight instead of at the end. But, you know, it is what it is, and ultimately I'm happy with the situation we have in the story. I just wish that there was a more, you know, a less stupid route that we had to take to get here.